Today, we're tearing down the curtain on Project 2025. Project 2025 is a plan that's been sold as conservative reform, but is in reality a dangerous blueprint for dismantling our nation's environmental safeguards, food security, and global leadership. This isn't just policy, it's a systematic attack on the institutions that protect our planet, our health, and our future. Project 2025 is aiming to gut federal bodies like the Environmental Protection Agency, NOAA, and the Department of Agriculture. They want to deregulate industries, weaken climate initiatives, and eliminate safeguards that keep our water clean and our food safe. This isn't about efficiency. It's about paving the way for corporate greed at the expense of public health and the environment. Before we dig into the details of how Project 2025 plans to destroy our environmental protections, I want to make sure that you're staying informed. Here at Turn Left, we're dropping critical insights every day, and you don't want to miss them. Hit that subscribe button now. Follow us on all platforms and become part of the Turn Left movement that's standing up for the environment, for public health, and for our future. You're here because you care. Let's make sure we're all in this fight together.
You might expect me to talk about how climate change will impact our future, but as a Floridian, as a Florida man, I'm here to tell you that the climate crisis isn't some far-off threat. It is here. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance think they can divide us by saying this crisis is some type of hoax. But I've walked the streets of communities that have been forced to rebuild after hurricane flooding destroyed their homes. I've heard the stories of immigrant farm workers made to work in horrid conditions exacerbated by this crisis. And I felt the scorching record heat and know that climate change can sometimes feel like an unstoppable force. But with our movement and with organizing and an administration that cares, we are making progress. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have proven that tackling this crisis creates jobs, that investing in clean energy protects our health, and that investing in mass public transit builds strong communities. And we must always remember that peace is essential to our climate and war destroys our environment. This election is about every drop of water that we consume and every breath we breathe. Fighting the climate crisis is patriotic. And unlike Donald Trump, our patriotism is more than some damn slogan on a hat. It's about actually giving a damn about the people who live in this country. Because when you love somebody, you want them to have clean air. When you love somebody, you want them to have safe drinking water. And when you love somebody, you want them to have a dignified job. And so, America, it's simple. Let's get to work and elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for our planet, for our future, for our present, and for our people. God bless.
Indeed. Joining me today is Olia MCCA, an Oxford graduate with an impressive background in policy and politics. Olia has worked on tropical disease prevention with the Ocean Partnership in London. Most recently, she was involved in the Pass the Torch Joe campaign, advocating for Kamala Harris. Now she's making a difference with the Center for U.S. Voters Abroad, mobilizing overseas voters to make their voices heard. Olia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here. And, it's important that we draw attention to these issues because the threat from Trump is very real. And if you believe that our climate is important, you are not going to want him in office.
In Project 2025, the EPA is one of the targets. and it's right here on the screen on page 422. It says it's directed the day one executive order. A one-day executive order should be drafted for the incoming president. So as soon as he takes control, they are going to start the dismantling of all of these government agencies. And the truth is that they claim that these are economy killing climate programs, but they are actually green energy and sustainability are the future of international business. Um, by pulling out of climate accords, and we're not just shutting ourselves out of a multi-trillion dollar global economy, we would actually be endangering our future. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, you only need to look at like a college business program to see how big of an issue this is in business. And, when I say issue, I mean, there is a lot of money to be generated in it. And, the authors of Project 2025, they like to act as if, oh, we're just stripping away all of this left wing ideology, which is hurting our economy, which is negatively impacting our country. But the truth is, it's very easy to read between the lines and see that actually they are just going to war against everything they don't like. In the same line that they refer to economy killing climate programs, they also talk about irrelevant diversity initiatives and misguided gender based activities. So this isn't to do with helping our country or making it economically stronger. It's just about advancing conservative ideology.
Absolutely. And what they're claiming to be conservative ideology, I think this is perhaps the furthest thing from what conservatism actually is. This is extremism. And
Mm.
let's go ahead and address this straight on. What are the dangers of abandoning global climate initiatives?
Well, there's American standing worldwide, but there's also a whole host of economic issues that come along with it. And perhaps the most concerning thing in terms of risks to Americans is all of these programs, they keep us safe by keeping the world safe. As we saw in 2020, pandemics don't always start at home where there are the best conditions. Instead, they begin in places with low regulations. For instance, in China, there was very little regulation around the meat markets where people think the virus originated. And that was bad. And this is exactly what Project 2025 is trying to do, is get rid of the government regulations that keep our food safe and try and ease that process abroad. But the reality is all of these issues are interconnected. When we have good standards abroad for food, when we have funding for sanitation, keeping water clean, that prevents pandemics. And no one wants to see 2020 again, I
Oh,
think. So,
absolutely. I think we saw enough of that already.
absolutely. In the sort of section on day one, what Project 2025 is going to do about the EPA, they try and present it as if, oh, well, we're going to get rid of all of the climate change ideology, but we're going to, focus on having clean water, on these very like local things of like good soil, clean water, XYZ. But the truth is, and all the scientists agree, that's impossible without capping emissions. We live in an interconnected world. There's so much space being made for climate denialism, but the truth is that no serious scientists actually doubt climate change. And so it's a very concerning phenomenon where they're going to get the experts that say the things that they like, but unfortunately those experts are either going to have no integrity or be very confused.
In addressing the Environmental Protection Agency and what Project 2025 wants to do with this is completely dismantle it. Yes, on day one, they want to develop a plan for relocating regional offices and use enforcement to ensure compliance. This is all about control, and it would be devastating for our economy and for the world. And not only that, but for national security, which kind of leads us into our next topic or our next question about this. Why is climate resilience so crucial for national security?
Well, the Republicans love to bang the drum about immigration. The reality is that we are going to see more and more climate migrants unless we turn back the change of climate change, which I don't think it's very likely at this point. Already, we're getting close to that 2 degrees Celsius warming that's discussed in the Paris Climate Accords that the Paris Climate Accords wanted to prevent. And, I live on the East Coast, and we've had a crazy, crazy storm season this summer. And you can just see it, less snow in the winters in my case, but you can see the sort of disasters that have been unfolding all across America. And part of this is that we can't even really predict the effects of climate change accurately. Our climate is so intricate, and so many things have these butterfly effects. For instance, El Nino, the current that runs across America, has become very volatile. And so you now have these extreme weather events in new areas that aren't accustomed to such extreme weather, and they aren't prepared for these kind of storms. And that's a threat to national security in and of itself, in that, key infrastructure could be targeted. We're becoming increasingly reliant on certain technologies, which could be adversely impacted by these climate catastrophes. And, it's not just a domestic question. This is also an issue of around the globe. If it happens at home, it can happen abroad. And as I said, that leads to even greater pressure on our borders with immigration.
I could just think about the chaos that this would cause. Folks right now who are trying to seek asylum are the targets of such incredible extremist hatred. I can't even imagine how MAGA would label people who were trying to come here, assuming that this was the safe spot in the world to come here. The hatred, the projection, just the fear mongering would just be astronomical, and they just cannot even see that we are at the edge. Now, let's talk about how Project 2025 frames its approach to emergency aid and food security. They argue that emergency aid through large organizations like the UN is insufficient and corrupt. And they want to shift these responsibilities to smaller, local, and open faith-based groups. But this shift isn't about improving aid. It's about abandoning our global commitments and letting others deal with the fallout. Olia, what are the real consequences of this shift in emergency aid?
I mean, it's hard to describe, actually, the extent to which the plan to dismantle the UN and hand it over to, essentially what looks a lot like the sort of missionaries of the 1800s, which isn't to say there aren't great faith-based groups that support international development. For instance, I've actually worked with Catholic Relief Services on projects with the UN, and these faith-based groups, they are very, very willing to work with international organizations because they recognize that there is a bank of knowledge about what works and what doesn't, and that these large organizations, there are obviously issues in the UN. No one's going to say there are no issues. It is a bureaucratic machine, but at the same time, they do an immeasurable amount of good all across the globe. Trying to prevent, diseases that could turn into pandemics at home is just one small thing. Trying to, economically uplift other nations, and that is good for us. We want strong trading partners. We want nations that their citizens want to stay in their own countries, as opposed to, creating an even greater pressure on our borders. Not that immigration's bad, but there are a lot of people who want to come in. And ultimately, the sort of policies outlined there will lead to greater pressures on our country. And we don't want to hand things over to just local faith-based groups, because chances are they are going to be doing that work in a piecemeal fashion that's a lot less efficient. And it's just sort of a laundering for the reputation of kind of Christian nationalism that is the ideology that's trying to be advertised in Project 2025. There are alternatives, and I think that the current system we have, where faith-based services and international organizations work hand in hand, they want to privatize water much more than it currently is. At the moment, there's a relatively broad definition of what constitutes public water. The Project 2025 advocates for a narrowing of that definition and creating more privatized water sources. And that is like terrifying if we watch what's unfolding in Arizona and Nevada at the moment, where we are seeing real scarcity, and that's only going to increase as climate change gets worse. And essentially, they're trying to pave the way for water wars at home, which is just madness that threatens to tear us apart as a country. So that was especially disappointing, because water feels like this core fundamental human right.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to be charged for clean drinking water. So
It's just completely terrible to think that the folks who are making these plans do not even have the compassion to think about the struggles of everyday people and the food securities that they go through already. And now they want to make it even harder. And this will just lead to complete chaos and disaster.
in Project 2025, you see the complete eradication of many things important to the left, like diversity, like gender equality, like climate change. And it's only going to hurt our country. America is great because of its sort of plethora of different perspectives. And they're trying to just make it so that you can be one thing, which is ridiculous because we are a big country.
Project 2025's approach to emergency aid and food security isn't about efficiency. It's about neglect, and neglect that will definitely will cost lives. Without strong regulation, our food supply becomes a free-for-all, putting public health at risk.
Today, we have an amazing show for you.
Join myself, special guests, and celebrities.
What's going on, Ice-T? Andrew Yang.
Somebody else was hopping on.
Oh, hold on.
What's going on, Battle?
As we roast GQP Jackaloons.
He may not be a real businessman, but he is one hell of a con artist.
That's what it is. That's what they got indicted for. Treason and sedition.
And addresses the headlines of the day.
They must be held accountable.
Live streaming every night.
I got more time in a friggin' port in a friggin' combat zone than you probably got in the military.
This is Ojeda Live.
Well, finally on tonight's show, we're going to discuss the full-scale assault on the environmental protections that Project 2025 is pushing. Finally tonight, let's discuss the full-scale assault on environmental protections that Project 2025 is pushing. They want to dismantle the EPA science advisory boards, deregulate the automotive industry, and even dismantle NOAA, which provides essential climate and weather data. This isn't about creating a better environmental tomorrow, as they claim. It's about paving the way for climate denialism and environmental degradation. What do you think the specific threats to environmental protections are under Project 2025?
Well, I think that the main thing is that there isn't going to be any attention paid to emissions, to all of these kind of large-scale effects that, you know, might be hard to comprehend for the Republican politician, but most scientists agree are devastating both globally and at home. It seems like they want to keep some of the sort of, you know, core kind of things like, you know, regulating clean water, all of these kind of really basic things on a small scale. But the push towards privatization for a lot of these things should concern everyone, because as soon as private companies are in charge of our clean water, our air, all these different things, they don't have any incentive to actually do better when it comes to emissions up until there's government regulation that makes them do so. And I think with the privatization of the weather service, especially within NOAA, could lead to this really wild ecosystem when it comes to weather that we've kind of seen take place with news after Fox News, where there is just going to be a very perhaps two realities as regards weather, which is just crazy to see that, you know, the Republicans are trying to build out this sort of alternate reality machine, even when it comes to something as fundamental as climate that everyone has witnessed, you know, change over the past 50 years. It's just clear to anyone with eyes. But dismantling the weather service is just, you know, a ludicrous form of madness.
Especially now, you know, with the fact of that we may be facing the one of the biggest hurricane seasons in history, and they want to dismantle NOAA and our warning system and the tracking systems for that. It's just absolutely insane.
You know, they're called conservatives. In many conservative traditions, for instance, in the UK, conservatism is about conserving the environment. It's shocking, frankly, that a group of people who professes to love America so much should completely ignore the actual physical reality, nature, air, water of living in America. I mean, it's unpatriotic and it's mad. They want to hand over our country to private interests, and it's only going to cause more suffering. It's not going to be good for anyone because there are going to be carry-on effects that affect even, you know, the richest. So it's absolutely ridiculous to see this, and I find it both terrifying and immensely frustrating because not only is it bad for everyone, it's just dumb.
Thanks for joining us tonight as we expose the real dangers lurking in Project 2025. This whole thing isn't just a political issue. Folks, it's about protecting our planet, our health, and our future. Now is the time to act. Visit turnleftpack.org and sign up for our emails. We've got a boilerplate letter ready for you to send to your representatives in Congress. Let them know that you're not voting for anyone who supports dismantling the EPA, NOAA, or weakening our food and water safety regulations. It's time to take a stand for what's right. Project 2025, it isn't about improving America. It's about tearing down the protections that keep us all safe, that keep us all healthy, that keep us all secure. Folks, we are here to make sure that this maggot agenda never happens, but we need your help. Share this video. Tag someone who needs to hear the truth. Make sure that you're signed up for our email so that you never miss an update. And stay tuned next for Ojeda Live.